All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. And this session has been recorded. Good evening, everyone. And thanks again for attending tonight's session. We are again focusing on careers in cybersecurity. And this session is hosted by the Virginia Tech's BIT Cyber program in Northern Virginia. But we have a privilege of hosting students from Blacksburg and students from Northern Virginia Community College. And so hopefully you will learn a lot and you came prepared with questions. And I'm really excited to introduce tonight's panelists. We have two Hokies here, two alumni, and all of them are experts in cybersecurity in one extent or another. And I will let them talk about their journey in depth, but let me introduce Courtney Totten. She is Senior Director of Cybersecurity Technology Shared Services with GDIT, and she's stationed in Richmond. This bios will be, by the way, attached to the chat in just a couple of minutes. Todd Raleigh, who is the president of Central Virginia Old Dominion National Bank, and a Hokie who lives between Northern Virginia and Central Virginia, and is very instrumental in getting this program off the ground in partnership with Northern Virginia Community College off the ground. And Mr. Gabriel Galvin, who is Chief Executive Officer with RevTech Solutions, but we met through his leadership of cybersecurity community, business community in Northern Virginia Technology Council. And basically the guidance and the question for today, for today's session is really to have a conversation. There is no set format. We'll take turns. The main thing that students often want to know is, how did you get to where you are right now? What was your journey like? How did you start? Tell a little bit of that, you know, behind the curtains, behind the scenes, whatever you can share. And who wants to start?
Well, my mother would be remiss if she was still alive if I did let Courtney go first. So
no, I'm happy to go. So it's very nice to meet you all, and thanks so much for joining. I will say I had a very interesting path into cybersecurity, and I say I really fell in. I showed up for my job, and I was going to be a co-lead on the project side of the house, more of a project manager for a server team on a government contract. And I showed up day one, and my boss was 45 minutes late coming out to get me because they had the main file user file folders server go down, and they couldn't recover it. It took us several days to recover. We had to rebuild everything from scratch. The failover didn't work. And while that was not a cyber issue, it was actually our technology was just old and horrendous. But you know, we realized we did not really have a good disaster recovery plan and continuity planning. And then we said, well, what if it was a cyber attack? What would we do? So day one on the job, I really, when I say I fell in, I just sort of jumped in it, not even knowing it was what I was doing at the time. It was about 15 years ago, and built out an entire business continuity plan for the National Archives and Records Administration. And then from there, a lot of the cyber things started to come to play. Well, hey, you did this, could you come help on this area? We started doing things like website blocking. You know, in the government at the time, 15 years ago, that was very new. And so we started to do some of those things. And after National Archives, I went over to NIH, where we had a team of 1 that I grew to a team of 5, and we built out a security plan and how do we go through assessments and making sure we understand our control gaps. It was very new at the time. And so again, didn't even realize I was really getting into cyber. I felt like it was just more of a technology assessment that we turned into a cyber team. From there, I looked into roles. I was moving from the DC area down to Richmond, Virginia, and I stumbled upon roles at General Electric, and it was complete cybersecurity. So I applied for a role there, and I went from a team of 5 doing cyber to we had a team of over 1,000 at GE. So I was able to kind of go from knowing this much to being exposed to this much. So just took advantage of every opportunity I could. I was the person that said yes. Every time there was a fire, they'd say, Courtney, do you want that? I'd say, absolutely, give it to me. I'll clean it up, let's go. So for me, I really fell in, and I just kind of kept saying yes to interesting opportunities and kind of rounded out my horizontal experience. And then from there, went over to Thomson Reuters and led our governance, risk, and compliance space. And then now I'm actually back with GDIT after 15 years, where I started at the National Archives, and actually leading an entire cybersecurity services. So I really sort of fell in at the time. I would say where we are today, there are majors, there are degrees, there are so many certifications that 15 years ago really weren't there. The majors you could get at Virginia Tech at the time were BIT, computer engineering. There really wasn't this cybersecurity focus. So I love that you guys are involved in this program, and happy to answer any more questions that you all have. But that's a little bit about my journey. And again, I didn't even realize what I was getting into at the time, but it's been an awesome journey and I love it.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yep.
Well, thank you. And I'll think I'll go
next,
next if that's okay. My journey is a little different because I really kind of took it on a personal interest basis. I'm a career banker. I've been a banker here primarily the last few decades in the Northern Virginia, metropolitan Washington area, and always was kind of someone who always liked technology, liked learning about technology. Luckily, my wife would allow me the opportunity to always buy the technology that I wanted to have, and both here at the office, and always got kind of self-taught. And then about 8 years ago, I was asked by the government leadership in Northern Virginia to go on the board of NOVA, Northern Virginia Community College. And at that time, I'm kind of a experiential learner. So I said, well, the only way I kind of really be a good board member for NOVA was to start taking classes. And so I started taking classes in coding. And I successfully coded in 7 different languages, everything from Java and Python up to mainframe, and machine learning and all just for the fun of it, and had nothing to do with my day job. But and one time somebody at NOVA came up to me and said, you've taken enough classes, you could graduate with a degree at NOVA in IT coding. I said, well, does it cost me any more? And they said, no. And I said, well, then I'll take the diploma. Sure, why? And I said, but I still had like maybe 6 more years of being on the board of directors. And by then I was becoming vice chairman of the board of directors of NOVA. And NOVA has 90,000 students. It has 6 campuses, 4 satellites. It's one of the largest universities, colleges in the United States. And I said, well, I'm going to just keep taking classes. So I turned focus, and I had a good friend who was the head of government contract lending, or the government contract for AWS and at the time. And, her name is Teresa Carlson. And I asked Teresa one time if we needed to, have a cloud degree. And she said, there's no cloud degree in the United States. And I said, well, I think we can make one. And so I worked with NOVA and then President Scott Rawls, a close friend of mine, and we created the first cloud degree. I said, the only way I can really, do quality assurance is I've got to enroll in these cloud classes. So I started doing that. There again, a couple of years later, it said, you finished your cloud degree. And I said, well, second degree in NOVA. And I said, well, I want to see how well this cloud degree is. So I sat for the certification. So I am AWS certified, and I have a cloud degree. And then I focused, next thing was cyber, and I said, I think we need to, do some more cyber education around here. We built up and really built out the bones of the cyber degree. And I started taking those classes. And so now I'm about 2 classes shy of finishing my 3rd NOVA degree. So, IT coding, cloud computing, and now cyber. And it really helps in the day job, because in my job, not unlike a lot of CEOs, CTOs, or CXOs, is that you don't really understand what the IT guys do, and when they come to you, they say, well, we need to put one of these in. Well, why? Because it's better. I don't know what the definition of better is, but now when I sit down with my IT guys, I can have a fairly technical to the degree necessary conversation with them about the issues of cloud, about the issues of cyber. I think that's a key component of all of this. Is I think every business person needs to have a little bit of cyber as a patina to their degree,
Todd, I think we lost you.
I think we did lose him.
We did.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't want to step on Todd's toes if he's not finished. Let's see if he comes back in a second.
Okay.
There he
Oh,
is.
there he is. Okay, we lost
I'm
you for a
back.
minute, Todd. Yes.
Where did I go? Yeah. All I heard was people saying we lost him. So anyway, I probably have said enough, probably too much. I'll pass the talking stick to Gabe.
Thank you. It was great hearing Courtney and Todd's story. In many ways, I think there's some general themes that we are common to all of us. My background, I started with the IBM Corporation, actually in public policy, and then got into the sales and marketing part of IBM that grew into the professional services business. But I was jotting down some themes as you were talking. Like Courtney and Todd, the journey was not linear. You have to be open. You have to be passionate and find things that are exciting to you. It allows you to be critical, but also opportunistic. And so, for example, Courtney was mentioning that, when she mentioned business continuity, I thought about that famous year 2000 thing, and maybe some of the students don't know what happened back then, but the digit was changing from 1999 to 2000, and a lot of programs were a mess, and there was a lot of fear that was going to cause havoc. So there was different times in the career when you got into situations where you worked on resilience, you worked on the issues that mattered. I went from IBM to a company called BMC Software, to Compaq HP, Fannie Mae, and then I ended my last 15 years of activity at the MITRE Corporation, which focuses on government specifically, and information security was a big theme there. I'd had a diverse background in business and business lines, different industries, finance, insurance, process, petroleum. So I always looked at the IT solution set as a complement to obviously what do you want to do in the business line. So I was working at MITRE for the last 5, 6, 7 years, heavily on some cyber themes that had to do with things like critical infrastructure protection, or the actual World Cup 2022 coming up shortly, and the Tokyo Olympics, which was supposed to be 2020, which ended up being 2021. But looking at the issue of security and cybersecurity for some of these large events and systems. And then a big thread of my work was really around that critical infrastructure protection. So the energy grid, the insurance industry, things that matter greatly to us. How do we make sure that we have the information security available? So I'll stop there, but I think those themes are just so common, and they're so important to have that do it for the fun of it, do it for the passion, and try to find those cyber's big. There's a lot of things. Todd loves coding. It sounds like it, and he loves it. So he found that angle into it as a complement of his board activity. And Courtney's a problem solver and doesn't mind a challenge every day being thrown at her. So she came into cyber that way. I came in a little bit differently, having to do maybe with some, critical infrastructure protection things and public policy. But anyway, there's a space for you in that large spectrum of cyber all in there.
Thank you. Thank you. So a month ago, we had our alumni and industry reps talk about careers in government. We focused on local, state, and federal government. Tonight's panel is about business. And you have range of experiences from banking to government contracting to variety of government contracting / government agency works. So, and then moving to being a business owner, Gabe, in your case. So my questions the student ask, how is the government role, how it would be different from cyber roles in business? Well, given technical roles may be similar, but how working for a business is different than working for governments? How different for a large business is different than working for a smaller business? How is it different from working for a corporation, leading efforts to owning a small business? So there's something that I want to unpack, but again, with focus on your knowledge, your connections, perhaps networks, relationships, and again, how industry is changing.
Maybe I'll take a stab at that first, if that's okay with the team. It's interesting because my first truly 14 years of corporate life was the IBM Corporation, which has its own connotation, very corporate. I was very entrepreneurial inside a large enterprise. So not entrepreneurial, but intrapreneurial, meaning I took people's money in IBM budgets and tried to create things and do things with it. There are some similarities in terms of how you think about where you go to market, how do you channel what you're trying to sell as a product or service to the market. And obviously, if it's government contracts, it's the contracting vehicles. If it's a commercial world, it could be partners and other things that you use to get into the market space. Speed and complexity, right? I mean, they're both complex. Speed is much greater in the commercial side than in the government side. But the opportunities are huge in the government side. So it's not that one is better than the other, but they're different. They're different. I think I think a lot of people talk about that the old, large, monolithic IBM type company structures, used to be that is probably some of the parents and grandparents, you worked for life in some of these companies. Well, today, people are turning from job to job, different companies quite frequently. There's a big turn there. So I think the idea is think of your career as sort of composed of small steps. And in some cases, it may be working for small companies. I did start my own company 14, 15 months ago. Had a very good first year, very blessed on that. And but as I thought about this in terms of just before the session, I started thinking, I never would have thought early in my career that I might become a 1099 contractor for a small company to go get experiences. I was sort of marshaled into, you work for this big company and you stay with them for a long time. I think there's those kinds of blends of thinking and opportunities that if I was starting career over, I'd be open to a lot of these scenarios. And your personal situation will say whether that's good for you. You might be the sole breadwinner for your family, and therefore you need some security and stability. But if you're a dual income type family and you want to try something a little bit more risky, you can balance that and think of new models, think of new ways, maybe contracting as a 1099 versus being employed, because it may give you more flexibility to try things that you wouldn't do otherwise. I'll stop
And
here.
Gabe, I would say that's.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, Gabe, I was just going to say, I agree. And I think one of the things that's helped me on the business side, especially in cyber, is no matter where you are, understand the mission of the organization. Part of cyber is aligning with the mission of the company, because at the end of the day, you are protecting the company. So we call it cybersecurity, right? But I actually do like information security better. What is the information and the people that you are trying to protect? Understanding your company's mission. What are those trade secrets? Who are your VIPs? What type of information, if it got out, would be very, very bad for the company. So understand your mission, understand where your critical data resides, and what are those critical systems that maybe keep you running, right? So it's going to be very different. I will tell you, on the government side, it's a little bit easier. The government has defined a mission, right? They're each one of my customers, and I have 80 customers. So I don't just have one, I have to understand 80, and understanding what's their data, what's important, and making sure that we're helping protect that based on the controls that we're putting in place with them. So government tends to be a little bit easier to understand their mission, but align with that and make sure you stay relevant. So my other key point would be stay relevant. I think sometimes people tend to say, well, I haven't heard anything from the cyber team, so maybe they're not important. Do we really need them? But then when something happens, they need you, right? So you've got to continuously be making them aware what threats they're facing. So having an intelligence team is extremely important. What are the threat vectors? Who's trying to attack you? Why is it important we're here? Understanding the regulatory controls that you need to make sure they are meeting regularly over and over. So that's, again, another part of understanding the mission. Who's trying to attack? Why are they trying to attack? Understanding the data. Government, again, it tends to be a little bit clearer. I will tell you, when I was at General Electric, it was very confusing. We had several different business lines. We had everything from refrigerators to aircraft engines, to locomotives, to wind turbines, to entire energy fields. So understanding what we were trying to protect for the enterprise, what was our data, what was our critical infrastructure, and then what were we selling and how are we helping our customers? So you think about, you get a router, right? And it comes with a little like installation manual. we had to make sure that that installation manual for these things like locomotives had proper security control installations put in. So that was one of the things that I took over. Somebody said, you know, this product security, OT, IT, this is really interesting. What are we going to do? But okay, that was one of those things I jumped in to fix. But again, understanding the mission of the company. And then for the corporate world, you also have to understand the mission of your customers. No matter where you are, your customers are always going to be asking about what security controls you have in place, because supply chain and vendor management is a huge risk right now. You have to be ready to not only make sure you're protecting your enterprise, but you're ready to respond to your customers too. So that's some of like the business side that a lot of people don't talk about. Not all cyber roles are hackers and, you know, hands on keyboard. I will tell you, I had an entire team at Thomson Reuters that just did supply chain management. I had a manager, I had a team, I had team leads, because we were dealing with a lot of customer data. And every customer wanted us to go through questionnaires, annual assessments to make sure that we were a good supplier for them. So as our customer, we had to give them that assurance. So that's a little bit more of like the business side of some of the things you have to look at as far as like a corporation or being in a company. And then on the government side too. And then again, no matter where you are, make sure you know the mission, make sure you know what you're protecting and what regulatory controls matter so that you can comply with those. So Todd, I will hand off to you.
Thank you. And I think the key thing for me, and I'll take this from a perspective of, you know, a business from the finance side. And, you know, one of the things that's making most challenging is, you know, is balancing the right level of security with the right level of budget, with the right level of customer support. Because if you want to lock down the business tight, you can do that. You can do it so tight that you can't talk to your customers anymore. They can't talk to you, and you're fully secured, and your IT professionals will never have a black mark in their record, and you'll be out of business in a week. You know, and you got to be sensitive to the fact that their job is to protect the enterprise from intrusion and from sometimes unwitting intrusions from internal sources, because, you know, the number one source of you know, things that come through the gate are the ones that somebody sitting at their desk somewhere sees a free trip to Bermuda, clicks it, and suddenly they're in. You know, and all the protections that you put in place go out the window with one click. And so, you know, in finance, you know, we're dealing with other people's money, and you know, the reality of my job is they want it back, and they want it back in the same form and amount that they gave it to me in. So, you know, I've got to make sure that we protect that, and it's a challenge because my IT guys want to do their job. My salespeople, they want to do their job. My lenders want to do their job. The officers want to do our job, and the customers want to be able to communicate with us. And that's a very difficult balance sometimes, because the overlaying all of that is the budget. How much can we apply to this and still be able to do everything else we want to do? And that's not just an end of year or beginning of year discussion, that's an every day of the year discussion, because the environment is so dynamic that new things come up, new attacks come up, and new ways to attack come up. It keeps the cyber professionals in business to help us, not for only their own purposes, it's to help us. But there's also that middle ground that between government and business, which are great, which are the guys at Accenture and Deloitte Consulting. And I mean, they're doing federal contract advisory work to government agencies. And that's really, you know, GDIT, those are critical positions that keep the government, because the government can't keep up on all the changes. And they're relying on the professionals that come out to work in those roles. Fortunately, I have a little bit of firsthand family knowledge, because my son works at Deloitte Consulting. He came out of that other university in Charlottesville with a degree in engineering, and went to work on federal contracts, and he does that all day long. And luckily, the saving grace in our family is that my nephew is getting ready to graduate in May with a degree in BIT cyber, from Virginia Tech, and it's actually who's going to go work for? Deloitte Consulting. Yeah, so I know there'll be 2 alumni there, both from the family. So hopefully their mortgages are well paid. But yeah, that role between the business and advising the federal government is critically important for the federal government to stay informed with what the changes need to be. Is that a fair way to look at it, Courtney? Gabe, is that I think people overlook that the government relies on contractors to keep themselves current.
Absolutely. We're extremely fortunate in this geographic Mid-Atlantic state region to have the government workforce opportunities for the contractors that really are filling the voids where government doesn't have the staff, the personnel, or the know-how. And you're spot on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think some of the things that the government's doing that are really interesting to watch are the executive orders, right? So we hear about regulatory frameworks, but there's also been some very aggressive executive orders that are coming out that are actually challenging the government, and they're actually reaching out more now to contractors than they ever have, especially in cyber, because things like zero trust architecture are coming up. And the government, for them to pull that together is going to be very challenging. So they are reaching out more and more in those spaces. So I think especially when it's different, it's interesting, it's kind of innovative. A lot of times they will rely on those consultants and contractors to step in because, to your point, they don't have enough of those people to do the R&D. So the consultant companies are spending more of the money there so that they can provide it out to the mass government agencies.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So now I want to switch a little bit to more of a practical and how to. So we have a few students. I mean, mostly these, we have sophomores, juniors, and a few seniors here tonight, as far as I'm looking at the list of students, those who are attending. Students who are in Blacksburg and enroll in BIT Careers course, they are sophomores. Students who are enrolled in BIT Careers course in Northern Virginia, they're juniors technically, but they will have already completed a program in Northern Virginia Community College. And where we have a few students who are actually graduating this year. And this is an interesting situation. You know, we have companies recruiting, we have career fairs, and students attend them. We also have this interesting dynamic in the DC area, particularly students coming from other cultures, perhaps first generation immigrants, and not necessarily connected to the networks where families and perhaps you second or third generation Hokie, you know, those connections. And what would be advice to students who have not secured an internship yet or a job yet, but really are in Northern Virginia and ready to hit the ground running and ready to leave their current positions and perhaps shift gears while they're finishing the program? Who can they reach out? How can they present themselves? Given that, you know, we all come from different cultures and cultural barriers, and how can they overcome that or make it to work
Just to
for them?
clarify, are you talking about how they're going to get an internship? How to get a job? How to get what?
I think this is a twofold question. For students in Northern Virginia, because most of them already working, many are working full time, but not necessarily in cyber or tech related industry, but they are moving and they want to, and have had challenges in breaking into. So, and because they do not have the same access to perhaps networks that, you know, three generation Hokie or an American has.
I gotcha.
There are those barriers. So what would be your advice? How can they overcome those challenges?
Let me throw an idea out, for example. I mean, there's a number of wonderful organizations in the DC area, some that are government focused, some that are a combination of industry and government. For example, I chair the Cybersecurity and Privacy Committee of the Northern Virginia Technology Council. That's an organization that there's a student rate to join. It's very, very minimal. It's a nominal thing. And what a way to get plugged in and network. You can do it in the chambers. I also live in Leesburg, Virginia, and Loudoun County has its own cyber community. Same idea. They've got sort of these monthly get together and have a beer at a brewery and connect. There's organizations like AFCEA, which I'm sure Courtney and Todd know very well. Tremendous organizations that are really plugged into the DoD military network, NDIA. Everybody's got a cyber and information security bent. Find one of those organizations, and figure out a way to get engaged there, it'll pay back tremendously.
Yeah, I agree. And the one that I've been probably the most affiliated with, kind of the immediate past chairman of the Northern Virginia Chamber, which is the largest chamber here in Northern Virginia, and they have a sister relationship with NVTC, the Technology Council. The two executive directors, Julie and Jennifer, they're friends, and that so it's not competitive. Everybody wants you to succeed, because when you succeed, their members succeed. So it behooves them when they can help them fill roles that are open in their organizations. And many of these mid-sized and large-sized government contractors, they need and want and have a hard time honestly finding people to fill these roles of internships. And you think that it's something that's hard to do. It's hard for them also. They want to find interns, and luckily with the help of universities like Virginia Tech, they're more easily found. The marriages are there. The components of Virginia Tech's internship program and internship placement program are, if you're not taking advantage of that, you're probably leaving one of your best tools in the toolbox. Is that fair?
Yeah,
So.
Todd, Gabe, I agree. I think it's interesting. I've had a few different roles in my career, and out of all of the jobs that I've had, I've only gotten one from applying online, and I got lucky. I will say I felt lucky. It was when I was moving to Richmond. I applied to a bunch of places, and GE called me back. Outside of that, everything's been my network. So whether it is, an alumni that's doing something in cyber at Deloitte, I mean, we just heard about that, right? So we've got a son and a nephew. I guarantee it helped that your son was there, and then the nephew said, hey, I'd love to go there too, right? So family, friends, parents, friends, engagements like this, reach out and build a network. I think FaceTime is huge, right? Whether it's virtual or in person, but most organizations do have a student rate or something free. So if you're interested in attending an event, you don't see a student price, I would reach out to them and ask for it. So I'm involved in RVA Tech, which is the Richmond, Virginia Technology Council. And we hold events just like you both were talking about. There's things from socials to have a beer where you can talk to people. We have conferences. We have one dedicated to just women's events. We have cyber events, data, so you name it, but there's always a student price or a free discount for being a student. And I think FaceTime is just the best way to go. The more that you can get to know people, throwing your resume up there online, it's very hard to differentiate yourself. But if you can get talking with somebody and asking, the other thing I would do is if you're having difficulties finding an internship, ask somebody to be a mentor or to provide some job shadowing experience. Sometimes an internship isn't the only way to go. And I would say, if you just say, hey, I'm really interested, could I ever just sit down and talk with you about what you do? So when you meet somebody at one of those events, it doesn't even necessarily have to be, do you have a job? Do you have an internship for me today? But hey, could I talk to you a little bit about your career? How did you get started? Where did you go? Do you have any advice for me? And truly take some of that mentorship, because they're going to be able to help you along the way. So I would definitely ask. If you don't ask it, you won't get there. So I would just say, use your network, build a network. It has helped me throughout my career, and it's the best advice I can give people coming out of college.
Well, and a few additional points for you freshmen and sophomores. I don't say you're not going to get a beer at these events, but they do serve soda. So don't let that detain you from going. And second of all, my nephew got his job without even telling my son. So it was a surprise when he found out, because he didn't help his cousin at all, which I thought was the best compliment to my nephew and his go-get-itness. So, but I think the other thing is who is a good contact. It's really everybody you meet and everybody they know, because everybody knows somebody who knows somebody. And if I don't come away with this event with the 20 students that are on without at least maybe 8 to 10 invites to my LinkedIn, I'll be disappointed, because as a member of the board of Virginia Tech's business school, other students are not shy at connecting with me. So I would hope that this group is equally not shy, because everybody knows somebody. And when you connect with them on LinkedIn, then you can ask them, hey, I'm looking at getting a job at XYZ Corporation. Do you know anybody there? I can go out to my network and say, yes, I do know somebody there. I might be a primary contact, maybe a secondary contact. All your parents may or may not know somebody, but everybody knows somebody. And so everybody is a contact, and everybody should be part of your network.
Good points.
And a lot of companies offer referral bonuses. So your network, you're also helping them. If they've got a referral bonus structure, they can get a referral too for referring you, referral bonus. So just something to keep in the back of your mind.
Greed's a wonderful thing.
Well, I wanted to say that this is a great segue, because we are actually covering in BIT careers class right now really topics of networking. How do you create your the map out your network? And if you don't have one, well, how do you think about creating a map and mapping those relationships? So it's really just fascinating to hear you talk about it. And like somebody who came from high context culture, for us everything is relationships. And I married an American, and he says, well, in your culture it's all about who you know. Here it's more, well, we're actually discovering that it's more relational than we thought in this culture as well. So network matters, relationship matter.
And I think also when you create that map, think about some themes that are important to you in terms of what you might want to do. You might want to think about, an area of social responsibility, or an area where there's an ethics issue or something that you care about. Look for a leader who's in that area and connect to that person. And there'll be other people that'll be along your career that'll be important. So think sort of dynamically of that map. I think that's important to build a diverse network.
Yeah, so we're discussing networks, mentoring. Last Friday, we had a speaker in our class who discussed mentoring as a topic, and what mentoring is and what is not. Often people when you hear the word mentor, well, you don't ask somebody to mentor you. It's just exactly like you said, Courtney. You approach somebody, you want to really get, they're doing something that you might want to do. You want to ask those questions. So, and can you talk about, how you personally conceptualize your networks? Career, personal, professional networks, and how did it change with your journey?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've done is not only my network, but who are my sponsors. So as you move along your journey, I think to start, it's really important to go wide and make sure you're looking up, and identifying people that you can work with to try to find a job. So, we mentioned examples. If you see a role for Deloitte, but you don't know anything about the role, maybe go to your LinkedIn, see if there's anybody you happen to network with. Maybe somebody who graduated a year or two ago is now at Deloitte. So take a look and do a search and reach out to them and say, hey, I saw a job posted. I want to talk to you about that. Because all of a sudden they're going to be excited about their company, want to share more with you and want to refer you. So that's just kind of an interesting way to build your network and do it, very targeted, job focused. For example, if you look at a role and you want to figure out how to build your network to get in there. So that's one way. I think we talked about family, making sure you're looking through your family and who's in cyber, right? Is there somebody doing something that you go, that's my dream job? Reach out to them, ask to have the discussion. One of the things that I've done is I've sort of gone throughout my career is I realized there were people who were also, liking the work that I was putting out. They kept saying, we want to see more of that, and helping me kind of come up the chains. I will say it's very hard to rise up the chains on your own. You need to have a network. Every single day, your trust levels with your network is going up and down, right? So I could say something that is maybe not the way somebody in my network wants to hear it. And they'll go, oh, I don't really know if I think that way, Courtney. And they might back off. And then you say something else and it's going up. So being self-aware and understanding how is your network responding to the things that you're doing? Are you getting your point across clearly? how are you making sure you're self-aware about those things has just been something I've sort of been building over time in my career. And part of that self-awareness is realizing that person's helping me move up, right? They've taken an interest in me too, and really partnering with those sponsors, I call them, and making sure I'm connecting with them regularly. I have several sponsors that I've had the great opportunity to work with throughout my career that I no longer work with day to day, but I still keep in touch with them because they were such a big part of my career, and they continue to be. So if I ever go to look again, I know I kind of call it like my board of directors I can go to and say, hey, I want to talk to you about some things I'm thinking about. So in fact, when I moved from my last role into GDIT over a year ago, I actually leaned on 3 members of my board of directors that I call them that were my sponsors. And I said, look, you know how I work. You know things that interest me. Let me tell you a little bit about this role. I've interviewed. Here's what I'm thinking. Do you think that will be a good fit for me? And having somebody you can go to. So I think kind of starting out with a network, moving into mentorship, and then figuring out your sponsors and sort of your advisory board has been huge for me, especially as I've sort of navigated my career. I've taken a lot of sideways moves. I've taken some backwards moves. I've zigged and I've zagged to get to where I am today. And I will say my husband's on my board of directors. So it doesn't always have to be people you've worked with. It can be your own network. Figure out who you go to for what things. I think it's been really helpful as I've sort of figured out who those people are in my, kind of call it sponsor board of directors.
I think it's a great point, and don't get discouraged because not everybody, people are at different phases in their lives focusing on different things. So sometimes you might be pursuing somebody, but they may not be engaging with you. Don't get discouraged. There's somebody else on the other side of the ledger that will engage with you. So I think that's also important to kind of read, and don't take things personally. It's really about you shaping your future. And therefore you have to kind of continue to be proactive regardless of the ups and downs you might have in that search.
And I think part of that is wickering together what is interesting to you and where you think is going to be valued. Because, as you've heard from all the speakers tonight, we all are involved in organizations outside of our day jobs. And, that adds an entire layer of network and opinions and information. With me, I've tried to bring together education and business along with workforce. And the workforce is a general topic, but there are so many organizations out there like regional workforce boards that are in every jurisdiction. And their job is to take individuals who don't have a job, who need to know what kind of skills it would take for them to take a job. Well, that's over in education, and the jobs are over in the employers. And you bring those 3 in the same universe, the center of that Venn diagram is the person who needs a job. And, coming out of college, if you're still, that person is still seeking, there are these resources, these organizations, these individuals who really have an interest in you getting a job. Because I think no one is better, in a better frame of mind than those people that get up on Monday morning with a place to go. Those people that get up in the Monday morning with really no place to go, that's a bad mental place to be. And so there are people out there that helps you fulfill what you want to do, because it helps the Commonwealth. People that aren't working are a challenge. People that are working benefit the Commonwealth, and that's what the Commonwealth wants to do. They want to see you get up on Monday morning and have a place to go.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. So I'm looking at the clock. We have about 10 minutes left, and I would like to have questions from the students. We're in small enough group right now. We have a few people dropped off, but that we can take some questions. So students, as you ask question, just show your face for a second, and as you ask question, you can just unmute yourselves, and then as you're done, you can mute yourself, please. This is a great opportunity to network and meet some exciting people.
And I'll say that at least 2 of you have sent me invites so far. So 10% success rate. The rest of you are not showing up.
That's a great point about the power of LinkedIn, right? For example.
Yeah,
I had
one
a
thing, I know
question.
I mentioned it earlier. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Carter.
So actually, I wish it wasn't on my monitor right now to show my face, but just a question about internships. I'm a sophomore, so getting kind of started into that and just really getting through classes where you're starting to figure out what you want to do. Do you guys have any recommendations on starting places with certain types of internships or just getting yourself out there?
Well, Carter, what kind of work do you want to do? Because there's an old saying that an old boss told me that if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Which turn that around, it means every day you get up lost. So what is it you want to do? Because that'll give us some direction on how to point you.
Right now, just with the classes I'm taking, I'm just looking back and forth between the like DSS and cyber options. Still haven't really learned enough to know exactly where I want to go. So just in general, anything cyber or even just IT.
So I think it's also good to figure out if you understand what kind of roles out there exist. I will tell you, when I went into college, my mother was a teacher and my dad worked for the government. They didn't know anything about technology. They weren't talking to me about these things either. So I didn't really understand what other kind of roles were out there other than government and education. So definitely explore it. I would say probably something that would be good for you, Carter, is like what we talked about on the networking side. See if you can find somebody to talk you through different types of career paths or internship paths. I will say in cyber, my team has 3. So the first one's governance, risk, and compliance. If you're interested in policy, you're interested in risk management, reviewing vulnerabilities, prioritizing those for remediation, going through and auditing against a control list. It's a little bit more administrative and control heavy, more in the regulatory landscape and that sort of thing. I would say look for internships with governance, risk, and compliance. If you like to be hands-on keyboard, you like coding, you like automation, you like that kind of thing, look into cyber engineering internships. So that's the second space we have. I have a whole entire team that all they do is manage the tools that my team needs to use. So that would be a cyber engineering internship. And then the third space is security operations and intelligence. If you want to be monitoring the queue and saying, hey, this might be bad, go investigate it. Or who's trying to attack us? What are they doing? Look for security operations or threat intelligence internships. So usually those kind of titles, if you kind of know, are you a hands-on keyboard building things person? If you want to be monitoring things and being the one that goes, I think I saw something bad, let me investigate it and hunt around and see if I can validate something bad happened, that would be security operations or SecOps. And if you're more on the policy, the regulatory, the risk management side of things, that would be GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. So hopefully that helps a little bit in terms of kind of the different types that you might look for in cyber.
Awesome. Yeah, that
Go ahead,
helps a
Courtney.
lot. Thank you.
I thought Courtney, you gave a great answer. And I was just thinking, there may be even activities, workshops, capture the flag type of exercises, things that that are out there, but maybe you haven't taken a step to do, but go do them to see how you respond in terms of, is there connectivity there or not, right? And you learn a lot from those exercises.
Yes, one of our alumni, and all of us know her, runs US Cyber Games. She's organizing them. So look at cyber games, and there are different roles. You can come and volunteer in those roles. You don't even have to have any skills. They will place you. They need volunteers to register people to participate, but you can actually observe what's happening. And yes, so just put in search engine US Cyber Games and reach out to Jessica.
And I'd say
I actually posted in chat.
No, I was going to say some of the things that you should look at is one, some of the skills that bolt on nicely to a cyber, things like Tableau and Agile, being, Agile certified, having experience with Tableau. I know that from some of the recent graduates, some of the internships that I've helped the students get over the years with a myriad of commercial and government contract companies in the metropolitan Washington area primarily, somebody walks in and says, who here knows Tableau? And they're even the rate. One of them said, well, I've had experience doing. They didn't have to be experts; they just had done it, and nobody else in the room could say it. Suddenly, they become a critical part of the team. And I think when Agile, you're able to exercise Agile techniques. Again, you're a valuable person of the team. So I think picking up those kind of skills, even though they're not direct cyber related skills, they're great corporate skills that'll benefit you when you're out there in the market and distinguish you from the rest of the people that you're trying to, let's be honest, compete against. You want to be a team, but you also want to shine your star just a little bit brighter than the rest of the team. Those are the things that are going to help you do that.
Excellent. We have time maybe for one more question, maybe two, but one for sure. Anyone? And thank you, Carter, for the question.
I don't think I've seen a bunch of Hokies this shy. We should have started this with Enter Sandman.
Very quiet, or everybody's having dinner quietly.
They're studying for midterm exams.
Good say, Svetlana. I posted in chat. So this organization, cyber.org, it's actually a program built out for educators of students to make sure that educators can share with their students what type of roles exist in cyber. And if you take a look at the site that I posted, there's career profile cards. So my organization partners with them to build out videos where you hear from somebody in that role. They talk to you about what a day in the life looks like. It also talks about what does an entry-level position look like. And one of the good career profile cards you can look at, like I talked about cybersecurity engineering, that one actually goes through entry-level, junior, mid, senior. What are you really going to be doing? What are you going to be doing in that first 1 to 2 years? What are you going to be doing in that 2 to 5 years? What does that 5-year plus look like? So that it's not only a video of somebody talking about it, but sometimes really seeing like, well, what am I going to be doing in my year one? Like if I go into that kind of role, what does year one or an internship look like for me? So that might be helpful as you're kind of figuring out what you want to do. And I will say, sometimes people stay in the area they start in, they might stay in GRC their whole career. Or if you're like me, you might bounce around into every type of role that exists. So, but hopefully this will give you kind of a foundation of different types of roles and what you'd be doing.
That is excellent point. Christy Orton came to one of our classes and we recorded the session and shared with everyone in BIT careers. And she actually took us through the journey that she did there at the Technology Council conference. And it was fascinating using different models and frameworks of careers in cyber and just showing students that it's not just hard keyboard skills. There is a policy, there's, there's a lot of things. So it was very encouraging. And I know few students in my class were just impressed, and it's just like they've been given permission to explore something outside the box that they thought it was. So it was fascinating.
I'd like to add to that because different areas of cyber, some of the best cyber sleuths that we have, people that know how to think like the bad actors, are people that come out of the humanities. They think critically, they think systems, they think things that are really important that sometimes somebody who's just solely engineering focused might miss. So these are very important skills that make kind of the whole picture of what we need to, as an industry, to really respond to the threats.
And I've had another link, which is an organization that I've been working with in ISACA. If you haven't gone to that website, they also have student memberships. And it's a great way for the members are individuals, but they're individuals that are professionals, and those professionals are right in line with what you're doing. And if you participate, on a lot of times they're free sessions, they're networking online sessions. You're gonna meet people by virtue of that. And don't be shy of sending out an invite to somebody on LinkedIn that you've met and just say, hey, I saw you at this conference online, or I met you here. Send them an invite. What's the very worst they can do? Not accept. You didn't know in the first place before you sent the invite, but if they do accept, now you've got somebody that you can ask questions of, and you have in your kind of your repository of contacts. These people get on LinkedIn not to be left alone. They get on LinkedIn so they can make contacts with individuals of similar interests, of which all of you are them. And so don't be shy about that. I think, you're not invading their space. They have opened space up for you.
That's a great point. Well, there were a lot of good nuggets. Some students came later, but I wanted, takeaways that I heard is, first of all, don't be shy. Networking is everything. And what does networking look like? Join organizations, join local community. Like Northern Virginia Technology Council has student membership, right? RVA Tech, Richmond Virginia Technology Council also has opportunity for students to join. I guess the councils and chambers host their own career fairs, including IT and tech focused career fairs and events. So connecting and volunteering in whatever role and meeting people, and there is just no mystery to networking other than getting out and meeting people. And then the points, how to get experience, internships, approaching, connecting on LinkedIn, getting about internships or opportunities to job shadow, for example. And then finally is just again, figuring out what is it that you want to do, and then finding that match. And I think as you're early in your careers right now, and you're pursuing your careers, we hear more, especially from Gallup, that a lot of workforce is not engaged. And they're not engaged because they don't feel attachment. They're doing something they're not good at or don't have heart in. So it's the time right now to actually perhaps to look at that alignment inside of you, to what is it, how's it that you're wired, and then finding people who do what you want to do and just connecting with them. And I don't think, Courtney, you mentioned that you have your board of directors, your sponsors, and this new term is coming, especially in the diversity fields, sponsors versus mentors. Can you unpack the difference? And how do you ask somebody to be a mentor and somebody to be a sponsor, or you just don't ask? It's somebody that you map out for you and you just categorize them.
Yeah, and I think some companies offer mentorship programs. So sometimes you may get into a program and there's a mentor sort of assigned. I know a lot of organizations have mentorships too, where you can kind of say, hey, I want to speak up and request a mentor. The other thing is, a lot of times it does happen organically. And like we talked about, just asking. I think a mentor, especially in the beginning, is somebody you go to say, I need help with this, I want advice on this, somebody you go to kind of start navigating your career. And I think you sort of hit a point where you want somebody who can kind of give you advice based on knowing you well and helping you get through your own decisions. Like we talked about, none of us went through the same career path. You could ask two people at the same level how they got there, and their paths will look drastically different. So I think getting people who know you and have supported you, I think about a sponsor as somebody who's always looking for opportunities to put you in the spotlight, to let yourself be seen, to help you get promoted, those sort of things. And my, kind of takeaway here would be is bring people up with you. We're talking a lot about you all getting out there in the field. I remember going to a conference one time, and it was a women's conference, and they said, I got so far up my career, and I remember turning back and realizing I hadn't brought anybody up with me, but I had so many people helping bring me up in the industry. So several of you we talked about are going to be graduating now or going to look for a new career now. Some are maybe a year or two behind. Your network's right here. Every single one of the 20 people on here, network with. When you go to look for a career, see where they're working, reach out to them, stay in touch. And it is hard to stay in touch with everybody, but use your network. I would say this is a network, other organizations at Virginia Tech, other alumni. You've already got a pretty big network. My first job out of school was a sorority sister that was 2 years ahead of me. I realized she worked at a company I wanted to work for, and I just simply reached out to her and she helped me get an interview. So that's how it happened for me. I think you can definitely use the network that you already have. Many of you are probably already involved in organizations at Virginia Tech. Maybe there's somebody who's already graduated that you could reach out to. And I would just say, make sure that once you're out there, pull people up with you and make sure that you're a sponsor for others as well.
And for the 20 people that are on, look up Vincent Benvenuto, my nephew. He's a fellow Hokie. He's a cyber guy. He's got a job. So, you know, when you're looking to graduate, you know, reach out to Vincent. If you haven't connected with me, at least connect with Vincent Benvenuto. He'll appreciate the fact that I put his name out on recording. You'll live now in infamy.
There you go.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Courtney, Gabe, and Todd, for visiting our class tonight, and for sharing your advice. It's just such a privilege, and and thank you for allowing students to connect on LinkedIn, because I know some of them may have professional account, but if they don't, we will find a way for them to connect with you.
That'd be great. They all should. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
So Valna, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And do reach out